Yo guys, what's up? Today I want to show you how I create my mixing chain, how I route my audio tracks into channels, and how I route my different channels into a mixing bus. Alright, so those are all of my channels. And by the way, the same applies also for Ableton. In Ableton it's a bit different. There you got like groups and stuff, but in FL Studio, yeah, you need to route everything on your own. And in FL here I separated my different instruments into separate groups. So here are the leads, the pads, the vocals, the effects and so on. For example, all of my leads, so I've got like 4 lead channels because I think like 4 leads are enough for a track. Okay, you don't need more than 4 leads. But I mean, of course, you can also route more than one synthesizer into one channel, right? And all of my leads go into my lead bus, and this lead bus then goes into my leads and pad bus. And the same is true for all of my different groups, except for the drum group, right? So, I mean, the hi-hats, claps and perks all go into this drum bus. But for example, bass and kick, they both go into a bass bus and a kick bus, and then all together into a kick and bass bus. So you need to think of buses like a master channel for separate channels. So it's really helpful to have a kick and bass bus to only tweak the kick and the bass in a way you want to. And the same is true, of course, for the leads, the vocals and the effects. And this is my template project, and I always start like this. As you can see, for example, in my main project, here are the drums more at the top, then here are the vocals, and then here are the automations. It's a different thing. I don't assign my different tracks in my arrangement overview into my mixer, but I assign the different synthesizer, the different audio tracks and so on into my channel. So for example, this element here is my lead and it goes into channel 25, and then here I can also hear what the lead is playing. And it's super important that you really route all of your different effects. For example, also this crash is routed into FX40, and FX40 goes into my FX bus, and the FX bus goes into my pre-master. And it's so important to route all of your different audio files and MIDI and synthesizer into a channel, because when I apply global effects, like for example a endless smile, it's super important that all of my effects are getting the same global effect, right? Except you really want that one audio is like popping out of the mix and don't get affected by the global effects. So that's why I got this pre-master, and all of my buses go into that pre-master, and the pre-master then goes into my master. So my master is clean and I don't got any global effects on my master itself. You may ask, okay, why do I got 2 kick channels? Sometimes it's really helpful to got a top kick, to got a low kick, and that's why I got those channels, so I can separate top and low, or I can do some parallel processing. And by the way, if you're interested in parallel processing, I can also do a video on this topic. Okay, and this is basically my routing chain, right? So I assign audio to a channel, and then this channel goes into one bus and then into one final bus. This is the basic routing. And when I start a new project, it always looks like this, and I can develop a really fast workflow and don't have to do all the things like coloring the channels and stuff again and again, right? It's really helpful to have a template. Now, what do I do for mixing? It's pretty simple. On all of my channels, I've got SSL native channel strip assigned, and it's basically just a equalizer with a compressor and a gate, and then of course some overall volume and pan and so on, right? So this is my basic plugin, and this is on all of my channels, also on the buses. Most of the time I don't use it that much on my single channels, but in fact on my buses I use it all of the time. And also on my buses there is the native bus compressor if I have the feeling that I need some compression on my tracks. Now, really important tip, don't use compression or clipping on every channel. A clipper is really helpful to get like a extra bit of volume out of your mix or out of your drum bus or something like this, but don't overdo it, right? Because your track might sound a bit too compressed, a bit too distorted at the end. And the same is true for compression. Not every single track needs compression. And then, for example, on my bass bus, there is a kickstart already in the template. So when I open up my template, there is this kickstart, and the kickstart gets triggered by my kick, right? You can see I got the sidechain to my bass bus, and then I don't have to worry all the time about my bass. And on my drum bus, there is a FEB filter. It's cutting out the lows at around 500 Hertz. Then there is a TDR arbiter, and the arbiter is reducing the frequencies around 10K. And then again, the bus compressor and the channel strip. One nice thing is that I got the UC1 right here. So it's looking like this. So it's a hardware controller for software plugin. And when I tweak something here, and when I change something here, it is also changed in my DAW. That is pretty neat because I try to mix with my ears and not with my eyes. So it's one of the most important tips I can give you, is that you try to mix with your ears and not with your eyes, right? That's why I use this plugin, this hardware plugin combo, because I can mix with my ears. That's really helpful to get an understanding of equalizing and stuff. Of course, Pro Q4 is still one of my favorite plugins. It's super intuitive and you should use it all the time. So mixing is basically just finding the right volume and finding the right tone for your audio. It's really not a compression, clipping type of thing, but mixing is to balance all the elements, right? So in volume and in the frequencies. And also my template includes a low cut for my kick and bass bus, a low cut for the whole track, that's pretty unnecessary to be honest, and then a Endless Smile kind of plugin preset. And it's pretty nice for build-ups to have global effects applying to all of your different leads, kicks and so on. Much faster workflow. And always, if I need some more channels, I can always do that. I can just unlink it from my master and then put it into a bus I want. Okay, so that's it from my side. I hope it was helpful and see you guys next time.